again, Kabrina Ashley. Welcome to the show. I'm very happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Marketing, again, very big word, right? Very big word, a lot to cover. First of all, I would like to explore a few things. Obviously, we've spoken a little bit, privately as well. So I read your bio thoroughly. I kind of, you know, dig out what you've been doing, prior before to being involved in the marketing as well. I just wanted to ask you, Disney trainer, right? You're a former Disney trainer. So can you explain to the people about that experience? How did you get into it, and how did you transition into conversion storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my big dream from the time I was a tiny kid was to work at Disney. And originally, I wanted to be an Imagineer because in my 4-year-old little brain, those people got to color in the lines. And as long as I could color in the lines, then I'd be fine. And as I got older and went into college for marketing, communications, and leadership studies, I started to go, oh, I could just run this whole thing. So then I went from wanting to be an Imagineer to wanting to be the first female CEO of Disney. So I started setting my sights on what does that look like as a career path? And, when you're young and in college, no is not an answer, which was great for me because it made it to where I was able to do things that most people are scared to do. So I started looking into Disney and what options were there for getting on. So I applied for several jobs there and then found out that they had something called the college program. So went into the college program and actually started my career at Disney working inside of the parks in food.
Mm.
So think In-N-Out Burger, Burger King kind of feel working at Tomorrowland Terrace. And at first I was like, oh my goodness, this is not the dream working with food and people, and it's one of the worst jobs that you can have just in general because dealing with people's food is never a fun thing, and people who have been in that space
I've
are
been there.
probably they're nodding their heads going, yeah, serving anything like that, everyone should have to do it so that you understand how to treat people well even when they're being terrible, but at the same time it is not a fun place to be. And I was like, this is not the dream.
Mm.
And so I started to keep pushing and started meeting with different people and setting up different meetings with executives at the company and just getting on their calendar, asking, saying, hey, can I come pick your brain for a couple of hours? Can I follow you around? Can we go look at attractions? And as I started to do that, it made it very easy for me to jump from what I was doing into what I wanted to do because then people started to see the expertise that I had and the
Mm.
background that I had in auditing, which is what one of the things that I did. I audited the attractions there and wrote all their pamphlets for children with autism of does it have water? Does it have lights? Things that we don't think about when we get onto an attraction, when we don't have those kinds of needs that we have to filter out. So I was able to create all of that from the ground up because the company didn't have it yet. But they were having the complaints come in of, well, I can't get onto this ride because all of a sudden there's water that splashes up on us that we weren't expecting. And for children with autism, that can cause a ginormous meltdown
Mm.
versus somebody just having an inconvenience of getting wet, for example.
Yeah. Wow. So obviously you found out that pursuing a career in Disney was like, wow, okay, that's a different picture that I thought it's going to be. Still, something made you to go out there and talk with these C-suite level managers and important people within the company and pick their brain, right? So what got you to that point? Because I'm sure there's a lot of professionals right now who are trying to pursue or have an idea of pursuing something big in some of those huge companies that are out there.
Mhm.
So what would you give in terms of that, feedback to them? If it doesn't work out, you still can make it and kind of figure what got you into that, mindset, just to change mindset. Because I'm pretty sure you were very serious about becoming a first female CEO, right?
Yeah. And so what I started doing is, I think when you first get into this, especially when you're younger, you go, who can get me to where I want to go the fastest? Which is an okay place to be. But the better place to be mindset wise is how can I create connections with people? How can I create community with the people around me, whether they can help me get to the next thing or not? Because at the end of the day, like I coach speakers and people get really upset when I'm like, yeah, you should get onto smaller podcasts because those are the people that as they grow, you're growing with them and you're not having to do anything.
Yeah.
And people don't realize when I first started, I was on hundreds of podcasts. And as these podcasts have gotten bigger, then those episodes keep getting listened to by people.
Yeah.
And we'll go back and listen to the whole, like Taylor Swift. Well, you get obsessed with her and then you listen to all of her discography.
Yeah.
The same thing happens when you become obsessed with a podcaster and the message that they're talking about. Then you're like, oh, who else have they had on? Who else can I be ingrained with that's teaching these kinds of ideas? And so starting out small and then deciding, hey, I'm not coming at this from a how do I get something out of this mentality. I'm coming out of this of how can I help people? So any relationship that I get into, whether it's somebody who I view as bigger than me or somebody who I would view as smaller than me in the spectrum of the creator
Mhm.
economy, entrepreneurs, any of that,
Yeah.
I ask myself, how can I help them? Because then we've created reciprocity.
Hmm.
So if I help them, and then in 6 months from now, they're like, oh, our company is looking for a corporate trainer. Ideally, I come back to mind because I've created a relationship over just a transaction.
Mm. Very smart. But again, I talk about that all the time. It's, inside of things that I have been involved in, and obviously I'm involved in, it's always a long game, it's always a marathon, it's not a sprint. And we see a lot of people probably in the communities, and maybe this message will help them, what you're advising them to do, that I believe it's playing a long game. Because a lot of people, they're just trying to run sprints. Let me send a quick message. Let me do this. Let me ask that, right? Without thinking, we talk about that all the time in the community, adding value to the individual. It's a two-way street, right? So it has to go both ways. Don't expect just to reach out and be like, I need your help. Give me 10 minutes. I need to pick your brain or whatever. Right. So as you're talking about adding value to people, but I believe you need to have a long-term thinking, because sometimes it doesn't pan out that fast. It might be 5, 10 conversations until we can even ask in the individual if that individual is playing a big role in a company to even have a meeting, right?
Exactly. Well, and a lot of times people, especially in the LinkedIn world, we get into this idea of if we want to compare it to dating, people
Yeah.
get into these DMs and they're like, congratulations, I just took all of my clothes off asking you for something. And we wouldn't do that in real life in a relationship. So why do we think that it would work in a Facebook DM, in a LinkedIn DM to go, hey, we just connected, buy this thing. I have no idea who you are. I
Yeah.
have no idea what you need. I have no idea if we're even going to be a good fit together. And I don't know about everybody else who's listening, but I don't want to work with people who I don't have a connection with, because especially if I'm coming up with marketing ideas, I'm training their team, I'm helping them get on stages, we better be aligned because then my name is behind those things as well. So there's multiple layers that you have to think about when you're working with people
Hmm.
of how does this represent me? How does this represent my brand? Just like when you're trying to go out and find somebody to date.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. So talking about that communication, right? So conversion storytelling, right? So how does someone, rather than just going and running those sprints and just shooting the messages and just like, hey, buy this, right? And getting no response, by the way, right? So you're just wasting a lot of time, your time and people's time. So how to build those compelling and effective stories, right? That resonates with audiences and drives conversions. Can you talk about that a little more?
Yeah, absolutely. So most people, when they think about storytelling in a business, they're like, here's where we come from. Here's why we help people. Here's our backstory of how we started a business in the first place. And that's a terrible place to start because nobody cares. Nobody wants to know why you started your business or why you're doing this. They want to know how you can help them
Yeah.
because we're always going to buy from a selfish spot. So if we know that about people, we do this ourselves. This is why we'll buy from really clever marketing campaign companies because we're interested and we're like, oh, that has entertained me, for example. Or we buy from a company that has a story that resonates with us. And normally these are multiple stories. So, especially as a salesperson, as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, thinking about yourself as a personal brand first. Because the more that we can start saying, hey, my kid had a blowout and this is just like, and then relating it back to something in our business. one of my favorite things to do with my speaking coaching clients is to tell them to tell a story about the ketchup bottle in their refrigerator. The reason is because most people are going to have a ketchup bottle that they're looking for. And if it's on the second shelf behind the milk and there's that one person in your house who can never find the ketchup, even though it's always in the same spot, this is exactly like when people are on the internet trying to find you. You might always be in the same spot, but if they don't know where to find you and you're not constantly reminding them, you're not able to be in front of them constantly. And so I'm taking a story that happens to lots of people all the time and relating it back to my business and what I talk about so that the next time that somebody either says, "Hey, honey, where's the ketchup bottle?" or they can't find the ketchup bottle themselves, or they run out of ketchup, or they have to go buy ketchup at the store, my story comes back to mind.
Mm.
So I'm not relying on the algorithm to bring me back to mind, to bring me front and center. I'm relying on the stories that are already embedded in people's lives to bring me back up consistently over and over and over again.
Interesting. So there's a lot of psychology and science behind it, right? So
Absolutely.
and you talk about that. So you integrate brain science, psychology, and gamification, right? So these elements kind of play together in creating this powerful strategy that helps businesses accelerate the growth, right?
Exactly. And so I like to think about it as if I have a bunch of different colors of cellophane. And so we might start with creating a story library of different stories that happen. I tell my clients, if you would tell it at a cocktail party or you would call your best friend to tell them about it, we're going to write it down. No matter how silly, no matter how out of the box it is, because we might not use every single story, but there's going to be a good majority of them that we're able to connect to something else. And if we can just sit down and have a matrix where we have the story and then we say, this is just like, it's easy to start thinking, well, what does this relate back to in my business? What does this relate back to in the things that I'm the best at? So even if you're a career person and you're looking to jump from one job position to another job position, whether in the same company or a different company, I'm now creating content pillars that I can tell people that I'm the best at. Here's where I'm a thought leader. Because there's so many things we can't put on that one sheet of paper for our resume.
Mhm.
So I don't talk about the fact that I'm a generational studies fanatic and I love reading all the research on it and how different people connect with different people. But I use a lot of that in my corporate training. So if you were to go and look at one of my pamphlets for that, it's going to be very heavy on that. So because it's not in something like my bio, for example, I can go ahead and start talking about that in different aspects. Here's generational things. Here's a commercial that I just posted on LinkedIn not that long ago about generational studies and how that connects to how we communicate. And then I can lead that back to that corporate consulting that I do.
Mm.
And so now I'm taking different content pieces that I'm the best at and saying, hey, this is my thought process on this. Here's why this marketing campaign did really well. Here's why this marketing campaign didn't do well. And then people are trusting me based on the analysis that I'm doing on different content and the stories that I'm telling versus me necessarily even doing those things. So as you're trying to elevate yourself, this is a great way to get in front of those people, even if that means tagging that person and saying, hey, here's a missed opportunity that you could be doing. Here's some suggestions from a marketing expert, from a finance expert, from a
I know, yeah.
sales guy. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So regarding, because again, telling the story, right? And there's if you have been in business, if because a lot of people maybe they're starting it's a first company, it's startup, right? Or maybe they have a few companies before. I don't know where they are, right? But telling your story, right? So how does someone like find that unique story to tell, right? Because right now sometimes it feels like the market is really saturated, right? Everybody's trying to be bigger, faster, whatever the story they're trying to tell, right? And some companies are telling really great stories. Maybe they've been here around for a long, long time. But a lot of individuals, as far as you can check some particular platforms, for example, taking Instagram. A lot of people are just trying to duplicate what other people are doing. Same voice, same story, same message, and trying to get the same results, which doesn't work, right? Because people lean towards people that are unique, right? They're unique, they're different in their own way, they're authentic, right? Probably that's the word. So how do you find that unique voice and unique story to tell?
Yeah. So a lot of times it's going to be sitting down and deciding what makes you angry, what are those pet peeves in the market, and then going, okay, I could sit here and complain about it, or I can fix it. So I have a personal life rule that leaks into my business of, if I am complaining about something and I haven't done something to fix it, I'm not allowed to complain about it. If I do something to fix it and it doesn't work, then I can complain about it all day. I can call my friends, I can write blog posts about it, like whatever you want to do. But if I haven't done something to try and fix it, I'm not allowed to complain. And so a lot of times, instead of trying to figure out ways to break the mold or create a pattern interrupt, most business owners, career people, as well as corporations sit there and go, well, this is not fair because the market is saturated. There's too many people. There's so many of the same things being offered. People just don't see us. It's the algorithm's fault. And so instead of taking personal responsibility for the thing that's happening, we decide to blame it on something else. So as long as we can go, okay, cool, I'm blaming this on something else. Can I now figure out a way to solve it? And that's where creativity happens. Because now I'm not thinking about the problem per se. I'm thinking about a way to go ahead and solve that problem for
Mhm.
myself, for my clients. And this is where I love pattern interrupts. So if something's always this way, and I go, if I was going to be that little kid in a room, like think about a quiet restaurant, it's really nice. They've got all the nice tablecloths. And then all of a sudden you hear somebody scream.
Yeah,
That creates a huge pattern interrupt. And what does everybody do when there's a pattern interrupt like that? They stop and they look.
yeah.
And so if the whole point is to get people's eyeballs on you, how are we interrupting the things that we're consistently seeing all of the time in our business, on social media, in email marketing, and changing that up?
Hmm. Interesting. So at the end of the day, I mean, what we're trying to describe when we're talking about storytelling is conversions, right? Is converting people into something, right? Into follower, buyer, clients, anything, right? So, and obviously, if you're a business owner, you're trying to increase this conversions and to build, as we heard in many books, and I'm trying to remember what was the book, but it doesn't come to my mind right at the moment. Raving fans. That's the two words that we talked about. Raving, build the raving fans, because a lot of people, for them, it's all about millions and millions of followers, right? I want to get to 1 million followers. But in terms of raving fans, there's a lot of books. I would like to remember the book name that I'm thinking about. He's particularly talking about the core of 10,000 people. 10,000 people, a core individuals that really are raving fans. They love your brand. They love you for who you are. They're authentic. They love your story. So how does one can build that, right? How do you start? Like, where do you start of building those raving fans and those raving followers?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you're going to want to do is start looking at brands that already have created that. Two that of the top ones that I use as examples is Taylor Swift and the Savannah Bananas. So the
Yeah.
owner of the Savannah Bananas has a great book. So if you're looking for one on raving fans called Fans First, it's by Jesse Cole.
Mm,
And really what we're creating is parasocial relationships. So a parasocial relationship is when somebody feels connected to us because they align with our values, what we're talking about, and then they find other people, which is what creates community, that then they can have those conversations with. That's why we see things like the Swiftie community be such a huge force for almost becoming the word of the year for the Oxford Dictionary in 2023.
oh,
And so when we look at things like that of, okay, how did they get to this point where an entity of a kinds of brand becomes such a big word in our society that we're considering adding it to the dictionary is something that is a force to be reckoned with. But how does that happen? That happens because somebody decided to break the mold and stand for something. And most brands are not willing to stand for anything. And when
mm,
you stand for nothing, nobody's going to see you because nobody's going to remember you long term. It's
yeah.
the people who make a disruption, who say, this is the line in the sand. This is what I'm standing for. This is what I believe in. And they stand with that good, bad, and ugly. And
Yeah.
they just take the PR as it comes. And instead of looking at bad PR as, oh my goodness, all of these bad things are happening, this is what people are saying, they talk about it as, what's the opportunity here? So
Mm,
Mike Michalowicz talks about this in several of his books about looking for the opportunity when nobody else is. And so what does that look like when the economy is bad, when the algorithm is making it to where nobody's getting seen for the way that they want to be seen, when your people aren't buying because maybe they're afraid or they don't know who you are, and saying, what's the opportunity for me here? And then I always come at it from the approach of, what can I do? What can I talk about in my messaging? And then talk about things like ads and spending money on it. Because most companies want to just throw money at the problems that they're having, like divorced parents, and hope that if they throw enough money at it, it's going to fix itself. And we know from that kind of a situation, as well as business, that rarely works. Because if we don't know what our people are going through, we don't know what kind of message they want to hear, we don't know what stories they're telling themselves, we can't tell stories that are going to combat that.
mm,
So if I have a mindset business, for example, and I'm telling people that they should just tough through it and they can just fake it till they make it, but they don't believe that,
mm,
it doesn't matter how many times that I tell them that,
yeah.
it's going to go right over their head. And so it's having the stories that you're telling that resonate with your people, but I can't even pick those until I know the stories that my people are telling themselves.
Again, as I said, psychology, right? Psychology. There's a lot of psychology. So yeah, because companies, as obviously from my own personal experience, what I see that companies, die inside out, right? Rarely it happens. Obviously, it happened through the economy, through the recessions that we can say and point, oh, there was a recession, something happened, and business just went away, right? Things, disruptions happens in businesses. We're going to see a lot of disruption right now. Speaking about this AI topic, right? I mean, it's huge. I talked with an individual that he said, if companies not going to apply generative AI, just using AI in general, they're going to die. I mean, that's a big statement, but probably, close to truth, at least to say that. So how does companies? I wanted to ask you in transition in terms of communicating that and communicating the message properly to different industries, for example, right? Because maybe they're working with different individuals from different industries, a number of clients, and maybe the same message, putting out the same message doesn't work. So how do you communicate your story for different industries in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to touch on two things here is the companies die from the inside out.
Yeah.
So our focus tends to be we want to create raving fans on the outside, but we haven't created raving fans of the people that are on the inside.
Mm,
Your people are the number one expense in a business. So why would we not make sure, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that they're enjoying their work, they're doing the best work for them and their personality, and we're letting them be creative, which then leads to innovation. So a lot of these businesses that are like, well, we went out of business because of the pandemic, because of this recession, because of these things that happen.
something, yeah.
Usually it's because there was a lot of red tape. So my corporate clients, what we find is that the more creative we let the people be, the more good ideas come out that then can create the next product, the next marketing campaign. And
Yeah.
it might not be somebody who's in that department. It
Yeah.
might be somebody
Yeah.
from the tech department who's like, hey, here's one of the complaints that we're getting all the time. What if we use that as an example in a campaign? What if we talked about that in our messaging? Because your people know what's happening in the market much better than you think that they do.
Mm,
Much better than any of the market research is going to tell you because they're dealing with the customer, whether B2B or B2C, every single day in different aspects. So when you have different kinds of brands, so for me personally, I work with entrepreneurs as well as corporations. So I have to have two very different messages on the same idea. Although that I'm doing the same thing with both of them, if I'm going to talk about innovation with an entrepreneur, they're going to be on board right away because they're all about innovation and the next thing. when I talk about innovation with a corporation, especially when there's a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of red tape, I have to come at this from a different perspective of how does this relate to the ROI?
Yeah.
What's the bottom line here? Why would we want to come in and train your employees? And why would you want to pay me thousands of dollars to come in and do that? And having that kind of conversation of this is good for you long term, and how do we make things stick?
Yeah.
Because there's two very different mindsets here and two very different kinds of buyers,
Yeah.
which goes back to knowing the stories that they're telling themselves. So if they've been burned, for example, in corporate by another trainer who came in and they're like, well, that didn't really move the needle. That didn't do anything for us. That's where I have to come in and say, well, here's the stats, here's the research, here's why this is important, here's what you can expect for your bottom line so that they understand it. That sale is going to be a lot easier on an entrepreneur side of let's be creative, let's get that brain board out and figure out all the different ways that we can be making a disruption in the market without disrupting the way that business runs.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very powerful message. In terms of, I would like to come back to the storytelling too, because it's all about that, right? Like, how do you tell the story? How do you stand out, right? And these days, because I'm keep thinking about, again, AI and what's happening in industry. Like when you go on LinkedIn, at least on my feeds, there's probably 80% of the feed is just like AI discussions, right? Somebody's posting something about AI or posting a post created by AI, anything, right? So what do you think in terms of that intersection with the technology and storytelling shaping the future of marketing? What do you think that's going to look like? Are we just going to see individuals, which, by the way, you can do that. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar. You can train AI, basically do a quick video, just like I'm talking right now, record a voice and basically train it to say and, pretty much do whatever you want and just kind of have it automatically scheduled, post it, and whatever. So do you think this is going to be the way, companies or people are going to be telling stories, or you think the market still will demand authenticity and realness from people?
Yeah, I think that what we're going to start seeing and what we're already starting to see is that people can tell the different
Yeah.
patterns that AI presents. There's certain words, there's certain phrases, like anytime you have it read an email and it goes, I hope this email finds you well. I've never had a piece of mail walk up to me and find me well.
I've been
So,
guilty. That's how I open up. I'm like, what do you say?
yeah, exactly. And so this is where authentic storytelling comes in, which
Yeah.
AI is never going to be able to do. Even if you fed it a bunch of stories, it's going to mix things up. It's not going to understand how to relate those back. And
Mm,
so one of the things that I teach my clients is, okay, if we have a story and we've written down our original story, maybe we go back to the ketchup bottle example. If I can then pull across a bunch of different points from that story over into the business, now I've created a lot of synapses connections for my audience, which AI is just not great at doing.
mm,
Maybe in the future, we'll start to
yeah.
see some
Yeah.
of that. But for the most part, storytelling is not AI's high point. Even if it has all of this data from other people, like a great thing to try is use some of these prompts and say, you're Walt Disney, tell stories based on how he would tell stories, and
Mm,
then go watch how he told stories in video form. And you're going to see a huge discrepancy here. And so knowing that and knowing that it's not going to come out exactly like you want it to, because it has a bias towards more of a hard sale.
yeah.
So if we know that we want to have less hustle, more authenticity, and more attraction marketing in our marketing campaigns, which we're finding is working much better than the old ways of doing marketing, then we're going to have to be more authentic in the stories that we're telling and come at it from an emotional human connection. Because we know that people buy from an emotional place. If we write things from an unemotional place and expect people to buy from an emotional place, there's going to be a disconnect.
Mm. I mean, it's a very tricky space, because I have been, involved in the industry for quite some time, just in marketing in general, and I've been seeing a lot of different changes. And I'm talking about if we're talking about, for example, if there's an AI video created, you can obviously see it because AI is not that good yet. to be undetected by a human eye and say, okay, this is not a real human talking, right? But there's a fitness guy. He talks about the courses. There's 1,500 likes, which are bought, and it's all that message that confuses people. So I'm just thinking sometimes, like, how many people actually just like see the surface and they're like, oh, okay, let me go and do that, right? Especially right now when, attention span is so short and everybody's chasing that, right? That goldfish effect that we as people have, right? We just move on to the next thing and next thing, and it's crazy when you think. But how individuals and companies can still grow successfully in spite of that short attention span, which might be even getting shorter, looking at all this noise that's happening in the marketplace. So is there a strategy there?
Yeah, and I think there's a pronged approach here. It's not adding to the noise and knowing what in your marketing currently is just noise, because you need to be posting X amount of days every single week. There's so much of that because we were trying to fight the algorithm. And now it's not the same way. People are looking to find you, but we need to be in the spots where they can find us. The other thing is using AI to help you in the process, but not be the only thing in the process. And I think we've kind of gotten a little lazy on that. We want to be able to just put a prompt into AI, give it a couple of things, and have it do all of our posts for the next week.
Yeah.
Which a lot of that is just noise.
Yes.
If you use it and it gives you some really great things, and then you add your stories into it, you add your ideas into it, then that's fabulous. It just saved you tons of hours of time. It's when we start relying on AI as the only thing trying to replace us completely that it becomes an issue. And so saying, what parts of the process can I delegate to AI? And what parts of the process still need that human touch along the way so that I can get it out in front of my people in a way that connects with them? Because what we're seeing, especially in LinkedIn world, is that people are starting to just write from AI and it's boring. It's
Yeah.
not fun to read.
Yeah.
It's not something that people are engaging with.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that engagement factor, how many people are liking, how many people are commenting, and how many people are sharing? And really, I want to only pay attention to those comments and those shares. I really don't care if they follow me. I don't care if they like it, because that means nothing to me.
Yeah.
There's no way for me to engage with somebody who just likes it. I need somebody who comments so I can comment back, because we're not having a conversation at our people. If we really want to create community and connection so that people get that know, like, and trust faster, we have to start communicating with them instead of just at them.
Yeah. Exactly. It's crazy when sometimes you think about this, that people are buying likes and comments and all this stuff that's happening. But at the same time, there's so we have to be very careful the way we communicate the message, and that's what's sometimes happening with these platforms. Again, I'm not claiming to be an expert on AI or some of these big topics that people are talking about. There are really great experts out there. I think just as a consumer of information, we have to be careful what you're talking about. Just the way we put out information, because sometimes you see a post how to fully automate your company, like go from 10 employees to one, use AI fully and you're going to be good, right? What you're going to end it up with is what you described, right? It's going to be a boring company, boring posts, boring blogs that's nobody going to be reading about, So you have to be really careful the way you interpret the message, right? And I think that's part of the noise that's happening in the marketplace, because everybody's feeling like, okay, my kind of feet, are under fire right now. And all these companies are leveraging AI or trying to do that. And I'm not trying to do that, right? And I'm going to be left behind. My company is going to be bad, right? So something awful will happen, which probably will, right? But just completely absorbing yourself with that and being like, okay, I'm just going to fully automate my company and it's all going to be AI kind of, from here. I don't know if we're really ready for that. And as you said, it's just like a boring journey. Seems like it.
I don't think that we'll ever actually get there.
Yeah, probably not.
Because people want to buy from people. That's why we have parasocial connections.
Yeah.
That's why we decide to love Taylor Swift. That's why we love Ted Lasso. That's why we love The Who. And that's the reason that people get that kind of connection, is because it creates this relationship of, oh, I feel like I know that person. And if everything is automated and not part of it, and there's no human there, there's no reason to be connected to them. We don't get the opportunity to get away with what Procter and Gamble and Target got away with when they were building their brands.
Yeah.
People are expecting you as a person to be behind the brand.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And really just reaching out and saying, hey, here's what I stand for. And that's where authenticity, I mean, authenticity was the word of the year for 2023. So if we're that into that idea, the market gets smarter. So AI is going to work. There's probably people who have automated their whole entire companies with AI, and they're probably making money.
Yeah.
Will it work forever? No, because the market gets smarter. That's why things change. That's why algorithms change. That's why buying behavior changes, is because the consumer goes, oh, this is interesting. I don't like how this makes me feel. This is where we got the idea of funneling, is when the consumer starts going, oh, well, I'm just going through a funnel, even not owning a business, not understanding what that looks like. We're starting to see that the funnel is not working in the same way that it did 5 and 10 years ago. And so people are starting to have to really focus on customer journey and where are people at and customization in a way that we haven't had to do until recently. And we're seeing this with big companies that are spending millions of dollars on their marketing campaigns.
Yeah. So, as I see right now, it's just like volume. A lot of people trying to do volume, right? And it's going to hit somewhere, which that's what AI allows you to do. And there's a lot of great tools. If we're talking about video editing, anything that can help you to, save time, make things easier for your employees, of course, we should embrace it. We should use it. But again, yeah, fully automating it and just, so it's all about being unique, right? As we speak in today, unique, telling your unique story, being in front of the people, which of course I see a lot of individuals. I see a lot of big companies, again, excluding, we're talking about Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble, all those companies that, been here forever. There's a lot of big brands that I see today, like all the CEOs, including, Elon Musk. You like him, don't like him, but he's in front of he's the marketing. He's the guy, right? And through him, people know, oh, there's Tesla, there's Solar City, there's SpaceX, there's this, there's that. So it's being in front of them and telling your unique story, like who you are, what do you do, thought provoking. We see, what's this name? The guy that's just all over the place from Romania, and like there's a lot of people either shocking or but just being unique and telling the story, right? So, and I see that all over the place. The people who really do it successfully, I don't see any AI brands that have this run fully automatically. I don't see any thought leaders AI models yet, even though that's happening on Instagram.
And you can't be a thought leader if it's just AI running it.
Yeah.
Because then we're just taking old thoughts and repurposing them for something else.
Yeah.
And so if we know that that's what AI is good at, fabulous, use it for that. I'm a single mom of 5 kiddos. So of course I use AI. Of course I use automation. I teach my clients how to use automation so that the computer can do as much work as it can for you so that you can focus on the most important parts of your business, the important parts that actually need you.
Yep.
So you're thinking about it just like a relationship or raising kids. I can't automate that. I can't automate relationship building. I can't automate how people feel about me as a person. I can automate all the emails that go out. I can take the transcript from a call like this and then have it write emails for me that talk about all the things that we've been able to go through today, because it's still taking my original thoughts and doing something with it. I can manipulate AI and automation to make my life easier and take things off of my plate. But relationship building and connection and community will always be on my plate. And the people that are trying to get rid of that because they don't want to mess with people probably shouldn't be in business.
Yeah, exactly. Or they're going to learn the hard way. But the question remains then, for the people that want to do that, they want to be in front of the camera, which for a lot of individuals, it's tough, including myself. I'm naturally an introvert, which with the ADHD on top of it. So, like telling story could be hard for a lot of people. So maybe you can make it easier for us, right? and just maybe call out the some of the misconception in terms of, telling your story online, and what could be, a shortcut for it, if you can say that, telling your story successful.
Yeah, so most people think that they need to have an extraordinary story. And I'm telling you that you need to have ordinary stories. Completely the things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. I don't really care if you have all of these amazing things that you've done, that you've won all these awards, that you've now separated yourself from me. So when we tell extraordinary stories, sometimes those are great because it gives us that accreditation that we need for people to trust us. But if we tell too many of those stories, then now all of a sudden I've created a chasm between myself and my audience because they're like, oh, they're so much cooler than me. They make so much more money than me. They're so much farther ahead than me. How will I ever catch up? And if I'm trying to teach my audience, especially as a B2B person, how to do the things that I've done or how to get from X to Z in this method through a course, one-on-one group program, whatever your service is, then I want to say, hey, this is what this was like when I was here. Here's an experience that I had. Here's something that happened on a day-to-day basis, and this is what it relates to back in the business. Because a lot of times we're trying to convince people to do things that they've never done before, that they've never experienced before. So we're telling it to them from an expert level of here's what it's like once you've made $1 million. And here's the things that you can expect, and dream about this life with this big house and the in-ground pool and all these things that people want to talk about. That's all great. And I'm sure that people want that. But at the same time, if I've never had any of those things, my brain has no idea how to imagine that successfully without a lot of mindset work.
Yeah.
So I need to stair step my people to that of, remember when you first got your first apartment away from your parents and how excited you were for the freedom that that brought? Now I can talk about the freedom because now they're feeling it. And then I can stair step them into, what would that be like if you could buy that perfect house that you've been dreaming of, or those ones that you've been searching on Zillow that you just know you can't afford quite yet. And so now I'm taking that feeling from something that people realize. Most people have moved out of their parents' house and have gone into their own place, whether with roommates or not. So they know what that feeling is. And so thinking about our storytelling from what feeling did this story evoke, and what feeling am I trying to evoke on this side versus just telling stories to tell stories. What I see happen most in the market is people are either telling so many extraordinary stories of all these cool things that they've done, all these things that they've been on, that their audience no longer listens because they're like, well, they're so far ahead, it's not even worth it. Or they're telling stories that connect to nothing. They're just talking to talk.
Yeah.
Which is, if you want to do that, that's fine, but do it on your personal profile. Don't do it in the business profile, because sometimes it's great to get that feedback and to see what people think. And sometimes those stories can come over into the business side. But if you're going to talk just to talk about a story because you want to get some moral support or let people know what's going on in your life, fabulous. But that has its place and it's not in the business.
I love it. Or again, talking about AI, you can use AI and come up with something like that. I just put it for create a compelling story. Again, that's not a perfect prompt, but create a compelling story for a person to buy an online course. In the bustling digital landscape of opportunities, there exists a gateway to a realm of where aspiration. I mean, it's just like, it's crazy, right? So there is no way, AI can tell the story. It comes down to individual, connecting with individuals, being thoughtful in the way you connect with them, because that was a really great example of creating those steps rather than, hey, here's me, here I have $1 million, there's a house, you want this, click the link, right? So really connecting with people, and there's certainly a real psychological process that you have to go through. So obviously, as we kind of running out of time here, I highly recommend, for if you're listening or watching this episode, I don't know where you are, what you do, but I'm sure you have a story to tell. And if you're looking to really learn how to tell your story, Kabrina Ashley, that's the person you need to connect with. You can find her on LinkedIn. All the rest of the social media links are going to be included in the show notes as well. She is also, by the way, going to be speaking at Serious Marketing event in June. So you can check this as well. She's going to be talking more about what she's doing with the storytelling as well. Just an awesome individual. So and really, Kabrina, thank you for coming to today's show, episode number 2. Greatly appreciated. And look forward to catching up with you sometime very soon as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking great questions and having me on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Take care.